Blood stained the Montana dust as the schoolteacher refused to let go. The outlaw's horse reared. The crowd gasped. But Clara Whitmore, newly arrived from Boston with nothing but a worn suitcase and stubborn pride, dug her fingers into the bandit's coat and pulled harder. She should have been dead already. Instead, she was winning. This is the story of a woman who came west to teach children and ended up building an empire of courage in a town that had forgotten what fighting back looked like. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The train lurched to a stop at Red Hollow Station with a screech that sounded like something dying. Clara Whitmore pressed her gloved hand against the window, staring at the collection of wooden buildings scattered across the Montana landscape like broken teeth. Dust swirled between structures that looked one strong wind away from collapse. This was it, her new beginning, or her biggest mistake. "Last stop, ma'am," the conductor said behind her, his voice carrying the practiced indifference of a man who'd watched hundreds of hopeful people step off into disappointment. Clara stood smoothing her traveling dress, dark blue, practical, already wrinkled from 3 days of sitting. The other passengers had departed hours ago at larger towns. She'd ridden the final stretch alone, watching the landscape grow wilder and emptier with each passing mile. Her entire life fit into 2 bags, 1 suitcase of clothing, 1 trunk of books. 27 years old, unmarried, no family left to protest her leaving. The Boston teaching position had evaporated when the headmaster's son decided he wanted her job for his new wife. Clara could have fought it, could have begged, could have found another position sweeping floors at some grammar school for half the pay. Instead, she'd answered an advertisement in the Educational Gazette. Teacher needed, Montana Territory, frontier town, housing provided, salary negotiable. The letter from Red Hollow's mayor had been blunt. "We need someone who won't run at the first sign of difficulty. The last 3 teachers quit. 1 lasted 2 weeks. If you're coming for adventure, don't bother. If you're coming to work, we'll have you." Clara had written back that same day. Now, stepping down onto the wooden platform, she wondered if desperation had made her stupid. The station was barely worthy of the name, just a covered platform and a small office where a clerk dozed in the afternoon heat. Beyond it, Red Hollow sprawled in dusty chaos, a main street of packed earth, buildings that ranged from solid brick to leaning wood, mountains rising in the distance like jagged promises, and everywhere, that dust. It coated everything, turned the air hazy, settled on her skin within seconds. "Need help with your bags, miss?" Clara turned to find a boy of maybe 14, rail-thin and sharp-eyed, already reaching for her trunk. "I can manage." "Wasn't asking if you could. Asking if you want help." He grinned, showing a gap between his front teeth. "2 bits to carry them to the boarding house. That's where you're headed, right? New teacher?" Word traveled fast in small towns. "1 bit," Clara countered. The boy laughed. 1.5. 1, and I won't report you for overcharging strangers." "Deal." He hefted her trunk with surprising ease. "Name's Danny. My pa runs the livery. You really gonna teach at that school?" "That's the plan." "Huh." Danny started walking and Clara followed, pulling her suitcase. "Hope you're tougher than you look. Last teacher cried every day. The one before that just stopped showing up." "What happened to her?" "Him, Mr. Peterson. He left in the middle of the night after some of the older boys locked him in the outhouse." Danny said it casually, like it was the weather. "School's been closed 4 months now. Mayor's getting complaints from the families with money. They send their kids to Helena for proper schooling, but it costs." Clara filed that information away. "And the families without money?" Danny shrugged. "Their kids work. Ranch hands, shop helpers, that sort of thing. Nobody cares much if they learn reading." They walked down the main street and Clara absorbed everything. A saloon with batwing doors, a general store with cracked windows, a blacksmith's forge where a massive man hammered metal, sending sparks into the dust. Men on horseback rode past without acknowledging her. A woman in a faded dress swept the porch of what looked like a boarding house, her face lined and tired. This wasn't Boston. This wasn't civilization as Clara knew it. This was raw and unfinished and probably dangerous. Boarding house is just... The sound of hoofbeats made Danny stop mid-sentence. Clara heard them too, fast, urgent, too fast for the crowded street. She turned just as a rider burst from between two buildings, his horse scattering a group of men near the saloon. The rider wore a bandana over his face. His hand was already reaching toward Clara. Everything happened in pieces, too fast and too slow at once. The rider's fingers closed on her handbag, the small leather purse she wore across her body, the one containing her savings. $43. Everything she had left after the train ticket. Clara felt the strap dig into her shoulder as he yanked. Later, she wouldn't remember deciding to fight back. It was instinct, maybe stupidity, maybe just the final snap of pride in a woman who'd already lost too much. She didn't let go. Instead, she grabbed the strap with both hands and pulled in the opposite direction, using her weight as an anchor. The rider cursed, she heard that clearly, and his horse danced sideways, confused by the sudden resistance. "Let go, you stupid! Like hell!" The words ripped out of Clara before she could think about propriety, or safety, or anything except the fury burning in her chest. The rider yanked harder. Clara's feet left the ground for a second. Danny was shouting something. The street had gone quiet except for the horse's nervous stamping. Clara saw the moment the rider reached for his gun. She didn't think. She threw herself forward, using the momentum of his next pull to launch at him instead of resisting. Her hands found his coat, his belt, anything to grip. The horse reared, and suddenly they were both falling. They hit the dirt hard. Clara landed on top, driving the air from the outlaw's lungs. His gun went flying into the dust. Her handbag came loose and she snatched it, rolling away before he could grab her. She should have run then. Instead, she scrambled to her feet and kicked him in the ribs when he tried to stand. "You piece of—" The outlaw wheezed, curling around the impact. Clara kicked him again, all those years of Boston propriety evaporating into Montana rage. Her dress was torn, her carefully pinned hair had come loose. Blood dripped from a cut on her cheek where she'd hit the ground. She didn't care. "Stay down!" Her voice came out raw, nothing like the cultured teacher who'd boarded the train in Boston. The outlaw looked up at her, eyes wide above his bandana, probably shocked that a woman half his size had just put him in the dirt. The street had erupted into noise, men shouting, someone laughing, Danny staring with his mouth open, and then hands, strong, careful hands, closed on Clara's shoulders, pulling her back. "Easy," a deep voice said. "You got him." Clara spun, fist already rising, and stopped. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of winter sky. He wore work clothes, denim and leather, dusty from hard use. A hat shadowed his face, but she could see the stubble on his jaw, the scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He held up both hands, showing he meant no threat. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps. Her hands were shaking. The adrenaline that had carried her through the fight was draining away, leaving her hollow and dizzy. She didn't know how to finish that sentence. The outlaw tried to crawl toward his horse. The tall man planted a boot on his back, pinning him without apparent effort. "Sheriff's coming," someone called. Clara looked down at herself. Her dress was ruined. Dirt and blood stained the blue fabric. Her handbag was clutched so tight her knuckles had gone white. "Miss?" The tall man's voice pulled her back. "You hurt?" "No, I don't think so." She touched her cheek, felt the blood there. "Maybe a little." "That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've seen in 10 years. He said it without smiling, like he was delivering a medical diagnosis. "He took my money. Most folks would have let him have it. I'm not most folks." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "Yeah, I'm getting that." The sheriff arrived then, a tired-looking man with a tin star and skeptical eyes. He hauled the outlaw to his feet, yanking down the bandana to reveal a weathered face twisted with rage. "Wade Cutter," the sheriff said without surprise. "Should have known. Thought you were still in Wyoming." "This crazy woman attacked me." Wade spat blood into the dust. The crowd that had gathered erupted into laughter. Clara flinched at the sound. They were laughing at her or with her. She couldn't tell which. "Attacked you?" The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Witnesses say you tried robbing her." "She fought like a wildcat," someone called out. "Dragged him right off his horse." More laughter. Clara's face burned. This wasn't how she'd imagined her arrival in Red Hollow. The sheriff cuffed Wade and started dragging him toward a building Clara assumed was the jail. The crowd began to disperse, already turning the incident into a story they'd tell over drinks. Only the tall man remained. "Cole Mercer," he said, offering his hand. "I run the ranch north of town." Clara shook it, feeling calluses rough against her palm. "Clara Whitmore, I'm the new teacher. Heard we were getting one." His gaze was steady, assessing but not unkind. "That's quite an introduction. Not what I planned. Plans don't survive first contact with Red Hollow." He released her hand, stepped back. "You need somewhere to clean up. Mrs. Fletcher runs the boarding house. She's tough but fair. I'll walk you there." "I can manage." "Didn't say you couldn't." He picked up her suitcase. Danny had dropped it during the fight and waited. Clara wanted to argue. She wanted to maintain some dignity, some independence. But her legs felt unsteady and her head was starting to throb, and she was suddenly, desperately tired. "Thank you," she said quietly. They walked in silence. Cole carried her suitcase while Danny trailed behind with the trunk, unusually quiet. Clara could feel eyes watching from windows and doorways. The new teacher who'd fought an outlaw in the middle of the street. Already a story, already gossip. The boarding house was a two-story structure that had seen better days. Paint peeled from the siding. The porch sagged slightly, but the windows were clean and flowers, actual flowers, grew in boxes beneath them. Mrs. Fletcher emerged before they reached the steps. She was perhaps 60, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing an apron over a simple dress. "Heard the commotion," she said, looking Clara up and down. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing. It's something. Inside." "You too, Cole. Don't track mud on my floor." The boarding house interior was clean and spare. A front room with worn furniture. Stairs leading up. A smell of cooking, something with onions and meat drifting from the back. Mrs. Fletcher sat Clara at the kitchen table and fetched water and clean cloth. Her hands were gentle but efficient as she cleaned the cut on Clara's cheek. "Wade Cutter's a mean one," she said. "Rode with the Dalton gang before they got killed. You're lucky he didn't shoot you." "I didn't give him time," Mrs. Fletcher snorted. "Stupid or brave? Haven't decided which yet." She pressed a cloth to the cut. "Hold that. You'll have a bruise, but it'll heal clean." Cole stood near the doorway, hat in hand, looking oddly out of place in the domestic setting. Danny had disappeared, probably already spreading the story to anyone who'd listen. "School board meets tomorrow," Mrs. Fletcher continued. "They'll want to see you. Mayor Hutchins, Reverend Morrison, Mrs. Blackwell from the Mercantile. They run things around here." "Will they care about today?" "Oh, they'll care. Question is whether they'll think it makes you unsuitable for teaching or too interesting to let go." Mrs. Fletcher handed Clara a small mirror. The face looking back was still hers, but changed. Wild-eyed, hair a tangled mess, the cut on her cheek already darkening into a bruise. She looked like someone who'd survived a fight. Maybe she had. "Rooms upstairs, second door on the left," Mrs. Fletcher said. "Meals are at 8, noon, and 6. You miss them, you miss them. Rent's due first of the month. Church is Sunday if you're inclined." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. This town's harder than you think." Mrs. Fletcher began putting away the medical supplies. "But maybe you're harder than you look." Cole cleared his throat. "I should go. If you need anything—" "She's fine," Mrs. Fletcher interrupted. "You've done your chivalry for the day." He almost smiled at that. "To Clara," he said, "School's at the east end of town. White building, can't miss it. Might want to see it before tomorrow." Then he was gone, boots heavy on the porch steps, leaving Clara alone with Mrs. Fletcher and the settling quiet of the house. "He's a good man," Mrs. Fletcher said abruptly. "Cole. Lost his wife 3 years back to fever. Runs the biggest ranch in the territory. Doesn't talk much, but he pays attention." Clara wasn't sure what to do with that information. She carried her bags upstairs. The room was small. A bed, a washstand, a single window overlooking the street. Simple, clean, hers. She sat on the bed and finally let herself shake. What had she done? Fighting an outlaw in the street like some kind of savage? She was supposed to be a teacher, a respectable woman, an example to children. Instead, she'd kicked a man in the ribs and enjoyed it. Clara caught her reflection again in the small mirror above the washstand. That wild-eyed woman stared back. Bruised, disheveled, definitely not respectable, but alive. Very, very alive. She washed her face, changed into a clean dress, tried to tame her hair into something presentable. The cut on her cheek throbbed. Her shoulder ached where the handbag strap had dug in. She'd probably have bruises tomorrow. Worth it, she decided. Every bit of it worth keeping what was hers. Evening was falling by the time she ventured back downstairs. Mrs. Fletcher had dinner ready. Stew and bread, simple but good. 2 other boarders joined them. An older man who worked at the assayer's office and a quiet woman who sewed for the dressmaker. They both stared at Clara. "So you're the one who took down Wade Cutter," the man said finally. Word definitely traveled fast. "I didn't take him down. I just didn't let go." "Same thing, way I hear it," he grinned. "Buy you a drink sometime. That story's worth at least 1 whiskey." The woman, Mrs. Chen, she introduced herself, said nothing but nodded approvingly. After dinner, Clara walked to the schoolhouse. She told herself it was practical, getting oriented before the board meeting, but really, she just needed to move, needed to do something with the nervous energy still crackling through her. The school stood at the edge of town, exactly as Cole had described. White clapboard, 1 room, with a small porch and steps. The door was unlocked. Inside, chaos. Desks in disarray, some overturned. Books scattered across the floor. Broken slate. A blackboard so covered in dust she couldn't see the surface. The stove in the corner looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. This was where she was supposed to teach? Clara picked up a book from the floor. McGuffey's Reader, spine cracked, pages torn. She set it carefully on the least damaged desk. Then another book. And another. She worked in the fading light, straightening desks, stacking books, sweeping debris with a broom she found in the corner. Her dress got dirty again. Her hands collected splinters. She didn't care. This was hers now. This broken, neglected room was hers to fix or fail in. The sun had fully set by the time she finished the initial cleanup. The room looked marginally better. Still shabby, still clearly abandoned, but at least organized. Clara stood at the front, where the teacher's desk sat crooked and scarred. She imagined children filling those seats, young faces looking to her for answers, for guidance, for hope in a place that probably didn't offer much of any. Could she do this? "Thought I might find you here." Clara spun. Cole Mercer stood in the doorway, a lamp in one hand. "You're persistent," she said. "So are you, apparently." He stepped inside, the lamplight pushing back the dark. "Been working all evening?" "How did you know?" "Saw the light. Figured it was either you or someone stealing what's left of the supplies." He set the lamp on the teacher's desk. "Place looks better already." "It looks terrible." "Yeah, but less terrible than before. That's progress." He walked between the desks, running a hand along one. "Needs a lot of work. Everything here needs work." "True enough." He stopped at the window, looking out toward the darkened town. "School board won't make this easy for you. They're not bad people, but they're stuck. They think things should be the way they've always been." "And what way is that?" "School for the kids whose families can afford to care. Everyone else works." He turned back to her. "You're going to want to change that." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Clara said. "They won't like it." "I don't care." Cole smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "Yeah, I really am getting that about you." They stood in the lamplight, the broken schoolhouse around them, and Clara felt something shift. Not romance. She wasn't naive enough to think a single day could create that. But recognition, maybe. The sense of finding someone who understood what fighting for something actually meant. "Wade Cutter won't forget what you did today," Cole said quietly. "He's got brothers, friends, people who don't take kindly to being embarrassed." "Are you trying to scare me?" "I'm trying to warn you." He picked up the lamp. "This town can be ugly when it wants to be. You should know that before tomorrow." "I already know it," Clara said. "I knew it when I got on the train." "Then why come?" She thought about Boston, the closed doors, the polite rejections, the slow suffocation of a life lived in other people's expectations. "Because here, at least I can fight back." Cole studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, like she'd passed some test. "Lock the door when you leave," he said. "And be at the mayor's office at 10 tomorrow. Don't be late." He left, taking the lamp and most of the light with him. Clara stood in the near dark, listening to his footsteps fade. Then she walked out, locked the door, and made her way back through the dark streets of Red Hollow. Tomorrow she'd meet the people who controlled her future here. Tomorrow she'd find out if fighting back had been brave or just stupid. Tonight, she was too tired to care. She fell asleep still wearing her dirty dress, the cut on her cheek throbbing, her hands smelling of dust and old books, and dreamed of nothing at all. The next morning arrived with merciless sunshine and the kind of heat that made breathing feel like work. Clara dressed carefully. Her best dress, dark green, only slightly wrinkled. She pinned her hair severely, trying to look professional despite the bruise blooming across her cheek. Respectable, trustworthy, not like a woman who'd brawled in the street. The mayor's office occupied the back of the general store. Clara arrived at exactly 10 o'clock to find 4 people already waiting. Mayor Hutchins was a heavy-set man with shrewd eyes and tobacco-stained teeth. Reverend Morrison looked exactly like a frontier preacher. Black coat, gaunt face, expression of permanent disapproval. Mrs. Blackwell wore expensive fabric and an even more expensive scowl. The 4th person surprised her. Cole Mercer leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching. "Miss Whitmore," the mayor gestured to a chair. "Please sit." Clara sat, spine straight, hands folded. The bruise on her face felt enormous, impossible to ignore. "Well," Mrs. Blackwell said immediately, staring at the bruise, "I see the rumors are true." "Which rumors would those be?" Clara kept her voice level. "That you engaged in violence on a public street." Mrs. Blackwell's mouth pursed. "Hardly appropriate behavior for a teacher." "I was defending my property from theft by fighting like a common—" "Now, Martha," Mayor Hutchins interrupted, "let's hear the whole story before passing judgment." But Mrs. Blackwell wasn't finished. "We have standards in this town. Children need to be taught by someone with dignity, with moral character. What kind of example does it set when the kind that shows children they don't have to be victims?" Clara hadn't planned to interrupt, but the words came anyway. "That they can fight back when someone tries to take what's theirs." Silence dropped like a stone. Reverend Morrison leaned forward. Fighting back is not always the Christian response. Neither is letting outlaws rob people in broad daylight. "Miss Whitmore," the mayor's voice carried warning now, "we appreciate your spirit, but Mrs. Blackwell raises valid concerns. This is a teaching position. It requires certain decorum." Clara looked at each of them in turn. The mayor, calculating political advantage. The reverend, judging her morality. Mrs. Blackwell, already convinced she was unsuitable. And Cole, still silent, still watching. "I came here to teach," Clara said carefully. "Not to be decorative, not to bow and scrape, to actually educate children who need it." She paused. "If that's not what you want, tell me now, and I'll leave today." The bluff hung in the air. She had nowhere to go, no money for a return ticket, no prospects waiting. But she said it like she meant it, because she did. Mayor Hutchins glanced at the others. Some unspoken communication passed between them. "The school has been closed 4 months," he said finally. "Parents are complaining. We need a teacher." "You need someone you can control," Clara countered. Mrs. Blackwell's face reddened. "How dare Martha?" The mayor held up a hand. To Clara, "What we need is someone who won't quit after 2 weeks. Can you promise that?" Could she? She looked around the cramped office, at these people who held her fate in their hands, at this town that had already shown her its ugliest face. "I can promise I won't quit because something is difficult," she said. "But I won't promise to teach only the children you approve of, or to ignore the ones you've decided don't matter." "Everyone matters," Reverend Morrison said piously. "Then why hasn't the school been open?" No one answered that. Cole finally spoke. "She's right." 3 words, quiet, but cutting through the tension. "We've been letting this town slide. School closed because we couldn't find anyone willing to stay. Maybe that says more about us than about them." Mrs. Blackwell rounded on him. "This doesn't concern you, Cole." "It does, actually. I pay taxes same as you, and I'm tired of watching kids work ranches when they should be learning to read." "Your ranch needs workers. My ranch needs thinkers. I can teach any boy to herd cattle. Can't teach them to read if nobody opens the school." The dynamic in the room shifted. Clara watched it happen. The mayor's expression changing from skeptical to considering, the reverend looking uncertain, Mrs. Blackwell isolated in her disapproval. A trial period, Mayor Hutchins said abruptly. 1 month. You teach, we'll evaluate. If it works, you stay. If not, he shrugged. It wasn't much, but it was something. Agreed, Clara said. Salary is $40 a month. School operates Monday through Friday, 8 to 3. You're expected to maintain discipline, cleanliness, and proper moral instruction. And I'm expected to teach all children who attend? Within reason. Clara wanted to push harder, to define what within reason meant, but she could see the mayor's patience fraying. When do I start? Monday, 3 days from now. He stood, signaling the meeting's end. Don't make us regret this, Miss Whitmore. Outside, the morning sun was brutal. Clara stood on the store's porch, feeling drained. A month to prove herself. To show she could teach in a broken school with no supplies and a town that clearly doubted her. That went well. She turned to find Cole beside her, hat shadowing his face again. Did it? You didn't get fired before you started. That's better than the last teacher. He paused. You meant what you said in there, about teaching all the kids. Yes. Some of those families won't like it. The ones with money, they think education should be exclusive. Then they'll be disappointed. Cole smiled that almost smile again. You know what you're up against? A town that wants me to fail, a school that's falling apart, and parents who don't care if their children learn. Clara adjusted her hat. Did I miss anything? Wade Cutter probably wants revenge. Right, that too. They stood in comfortable silence. The street was busy with morning traffic, wagons, riders, people going about their business. Normal life in Red Hollow, unchanged by her arrival or her fight or any of it. I'll send some ranch hands over tomorrow, Cole said. Help fix up the school. Can't have you teaching in a place that might collapse. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He looked at her directly. You're going to need allies here, Clara. Might as well let me be one. First names. When had they switched to first names? Why? She asked. Why help me? Why? Cole considered that. Because I watched you fight Wade Cutter yesterday and you didn't hesitate. Didn't think about what was proper or safe. You just fought. He paused. This town needs more of that. Has for a long time. Then he tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Clara standing there wondering what exactly she'd gotten herself into. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of preparation. Cole's ranch hands showed up Saturday morning, 4 weathered cowboys who worked with surprising efficiency. They repaired broken desks, fixed the stove, replaced cracked windows, even built new shelves for the books. Clara cleaned and organized alongside them, ignoring their occasional startled looks. Ladies didn't do manual labor, apparently. Ladies didn't hammer or sweep or haul water. But she wasn't trying to be a lady. She was trying to build a schoolhouse. Mrs. Fletcher brought lunch for everyone, sandwiches and lemonade that the cowboys devoured gratefully. She also brought news. Talk around town is divided, she said, handing Clara a sandwich. Half think you're exactly what Red Hollow needs. Half think you're going to corrupt the children with dangerous ideas. What dangerous ideas? The poor kids deserve education same as rich ones. The girls might want futures beyond marriage and babies. Mrs. Fletcher's expression was dry. Radical stuff. Clara bit into her sandwich to avoid answering. By Sunday afternoon, the school looked almost presentable. Clean, organized, ready for students who might or might not actually show up. Clara sat at her new teacher's desk. Cole's men had built it from scratch, solid pine with drawers that actually opened, and tried not to panic. Tomorrow she'd find out if any of this mattered. She walked back to the boarding house as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold. Red Hollow looked almost beautiful in that light, almost like a place where good things could happen. Evening, teacher. Clara's hand went to the small knife she'd started carrying, another purchase from the general store, against Mrs. Blackwell's obvious disapproval. But it was just Danny, the boy from the train station leaning against a fence post. Evening, Danny. You really starting school tomorrow? That's the plan. Huh. He kicked at the dirt. My pa says it won't last, says you'll run off like the others. What do you say? Danny looked up at her, something calculating in his young eyes. I say you kicked Wade Cutter in the ribs. That's not someone who runs easy. Will you be there tomorrow? Maybe. He pushed off the fence. If I feel like it. But she could see it in his face. He'd be there, curious, skeptical, but there. Clara walked the final blocks to the boarding house, her shadow stretching long before her. Tomorrow would tell her everything, whether this had been a brave choice or just a desperate one, whether she could actually do this or if she'd been lying to herself all along. Inside, Mrs. Fletcher had left dinner warming on the stove. Clara ate alone, too nervous for company, then climbed the stairs to her small room. She tried to sleep. Failed. Lay in bed watching shadows move across the ceiling, listening to the distant sounds of the town, horses, voices, a piano playing somewhere. At some point, exhaustion won, and when she woke to Monday morning sunlight, there was no more time for doubt, only work. Clara arrived at the schoolhouse at 7:30, her stomach twisted into knots that made breakfast impossible. The building stood quiet in the early light, looking better than it had but still shabby around the edges, paint peeling, steps sagging slightly. But the windows were clean and the door opened smoothly when she pushed it. Inside smelled of fresh wood and soap. The desks sat in neat rows. Books lined the new shelves. The blackboard gleamed, finally visible after days of scrubbing. Empty. Completely empty. Clara set her satchel on the teacher's desk and tried not to imagine staying that way. She'd prepared lessons for different age groups, not knowing who might show up or what they'd already learned. She'd practiced her introduction in the mirror until she sounded almost confident. Now all she could do was wait. 8 o'clock came. No students. 8:15, still nothing. Clara stood at the window watching the street. A few people passed by, women heading to market, men on horseback, but no children. Her chest tightened. Maybe Danny's father had been right. Maybe this had been stupid from the start, thinking she could just arrive and fix what 4 months of closure had broken. Then, at 8:20, a figure appeared at the end of the street. Danny, walking slowly, hands shoved in pockets, trying to look like he didn't care. But he was coming. Clara stepped back from the window, not wanting to seem desperate. She heard his footsteps on the porch, the creak of the door. "Morning," Danny said, slouching in the doorway. "Good morning, Danny. Come in." He entered like he was doing her a favor, dropped into a desk near the back. Too casual, too defiant. But he was here. "Am I the only idiot who showed up?" he asked. "You're the first." Clara moved to the blackboard. "That makes you brave, not an idiot." "We're bored. Pa's got me mucking stables later. Figured this might be less awful." Before Clara could respond, more footsteps sounded outside. 2 girls this time, maybe 9 and 11, holding hands. They hesitated at the door until Clara smiled. "Please, come in. Find seats wherever you'd like." The girls whispered to each other in what sounded like Chinese before settling in the middle row. They wore clean but patched dresses, their hair in matching braids. Then came a rush. 6 more children appeared within 10 minutes, ranging from what looked like 7 to 14. Some came alone, others in small groups. They filed in quietly, watching Clara with mixture of curiosity and suspicion. By 8:40, she counted 12 students total. 12 out of what? She didn't know how many children lived in Red Hollow, but this felt like a fraction. "All right," Clara said, moving to the front. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "My name is Miss Whitmore. I'm from Boston, which is very far from here and probably much less interesting." A few small smiles at that. "I don't know what your previous teachers were like, so I can't promise to be better or worse. I can only promise to actually show up and do the work." She paused. "If you show up and do the work too, we might actually learn something." One of the older boys, maybe 13, with dark hair and wary eyes, raised his hand halfway. "Yes? What if we can't read good? Previous teacher got mad when kids couldn't keep up." Clara recognized the trap there. If she said it didn't matter, she'd be lying. If she said it did matter, she'd lose half the room. "Then we start where you are," she said simply. "Not where I think you should be. Where you actually are." The boy considered this, then nodded slowly. "I'm going to ask you all some questions," Clara continued. "Not to embarrass anyone, just so I know what we're working with, and everything you tell me stays in this room. Understood?" Murmurs of agreement. She spent the next hour assessing them individually while the others worked on copying sentences from the blackboard. The results were worse than she'd feared. The 2 Chinese girls, Lily and Rose Chen, could barely speak English despite living in Red Hollow for 3 years. Danny could read at maybe a fourth grade level, despite being 14. The youngest children didn't know their letters, but they were trying. That mattered more than she'd expected. At 10 o'clock, Clara called for a break. The children spilled outside and she followed, watching them cluster in groups. The Chen sisters stayed close together. Danny leaned against the building alone. The younger kids chased each other around the yard, their laughter cutting through the morning heat. They're doing well. Clara turned to find Cole approaching on horseback. He dismounted, tying his horse to the hitching post she hadn't even noticed the ranch hands had installed. 12 students, she said. Is that good or bad? It's 12 more than last week. He pulled off his hat, wiped sweat from his forehead. Word spreading you actually started. More might come tomorrow. Or fewer. Once parents hear I'm teaching Chinese children the same as everyone else. Cole's expression darkened. The Chens are good people. Their father works the laundry. Their mother died last year. Those girls deserve an education, same as any. I agree. Not everyone will. Then not everyone matters. He said it flatly, like a fact. I brought something. He untied a bundle from his saddle. Books, she realized. A stack of readers, a mathematics primer, even a world atlas. Cole, I can't. They were just sitting in my house. My wife used to teach Sunday school before she got sick. She'd want them used. He handed her the stack. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. Clara took them, feeling the weight. Good books, well cared for, worth more than her monthly salary. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me. Just teach them something that matters. He left then, mounting his horse with easy grace and riding back toward his ranch without looking back. The children had stopped playing to watch, and Clara saw the calculation in their faces. Mr. Mercer bringing books to the new teacher. That meant something here, even if Clara didn't fully understand what yet. The afternoon session went better. Clara divided the students into 3 groups by skill level and rotated between them. The youngest worked on letters and basic sounds. The middle group practiced reading simple sentences. Danny and the older students tackled more complex passages, stumbling but persistent. By 3 o'clock, when she dismissed them, Clara's voice was hoarse and her feet ached from standing. But every single child had learned something. Same time tomorrow? Danny asked at the door, still trying to sound indifferent. Same time. Right. Well, wasn't completely awful. From Danny, that might as well have been a compliment. The Chen sisters approached shyly after everyone else had left. Miss Whitmore? Lily, the older one, spoke carefully, her accent thick. We practice English. Want to learn. You're already learning, Clara said gently. You both did well today. Rose whispered something in Chinese to her sister. Lily translated. She says thank you for treating us same. Clara's throat tightened unexpectedly. You are the same, you're students. That's all that matters here. The girls smiled, small, uncertain, but real, before hurrying out together. Clara sat at her desk in the empty schoolhouse, listening to the silence. 1 day down. 1 month to prove this could work. To prove she could actually do what she'd promised. Her hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline crash, probably. The same thing that had happened after fighting Wade Cutter, except this time the fight had been quieter and the stakes somehow felt higher. She gathered her things, locked the door, and walked back through town as the sun began its descent. A few people nodded to her. Others looked away deliberately. Mrs. Blackwell stood on the porch of the Mercantile, arms crossed, watching with obvious disapproval. Clara kept walking. At the boarding house, Mrs. Fletcher had dinner ready. Beef stew and cornbread that tasted better than anything Clara had eaten in weeks. How'd it go? Mrs. Fletcher asked, ladling out a second helping without being asked. 12 students showed up. That's more than I expected. Mrs. Fletcher sat across from her with her own bowl. What'd you teach them? Reading, writing, some basic mathematics. Martha Blackwell came by earlier, said you were teaching the Chen girls alongside white children. Said it wasn't appropriate. Clara's spoon stopped halfway to her mouth. And what did you say? Told her she could mind her own damn business. Mrs. Fletcher's expression didn't change. Those girls lost their mother. Their father works himself sick trying to provide. If you can teach them to read, more power to you. Mrs. Blackwell won't be the only one who objects.
No, but she's the loudest.
Mrs. Fletcher took a bite of stew. You planning to back down? No? Good. Because the second you do, you've lost this town. They ate in silence for a while. Through the window, Clara could see the street settling into evening, lanterns being lit, horses being stabled, the rhythms of a frontier town winding down. Cole Mercer brought books today, Clara said. Did he now? Mrs. Fletcher's tone suggested this wasn't surprising. He said his wife used to teach. Elizabeth, beautiful woman, kind. Cancer took her slow. Mrs. Fletcher refilled Clara's water glass. Cole hasn't been the same since. Works himself half to death on that ranch, doesn't socialize much, but he's got a soft spot for people trying to do right. I'm just doing my job. Keep telling yourself that. Mrs. Fletcher stood, gathering dishes. But that man doesn't bring books to just anyone. Clara wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She helped clean up, then climbed the stairs to her room as full darkness fell outside. She tried to plan tomorrow's lessons, but her mind kept drifting. To the students' faces when they'd finally understood a concept. To Danny's careful indifference that couldn't quite hide his interest. To Lily Chen's gratitude for something as basic as being treated like a person. To Cole's quiet support given without expectation. Sleep came easier than the night before. Progress? Maybe. Or just exhaustion. The next morning brought 14 students. 2 new faces, brothers, 10 and 8, who lived on a farm outside town. Their mother had heard about the school reopening and sent them in a wagon at dawn. Clara felt something loosen in her chest. Growing. The school was growing. She taught with more confidence today, the lessons flowing better now that she understood her students' capabilities. She had Danny helping the younger kids with their letters while she worked with the middle group. The Chen sisters practiced English pronunciation with surprising determination. At lunch, eaten outside in the shade of the building, the children began mixing more naturally. The farm boys shared food with Danny. Rose Chen taught one of the younger girls a clapping game that transcended language. Small things, but they mattered. Cole didn't come that day, but he sent one of his ranch hands with a box of slate and chalk. The man tipped his hat to Clara without a word and rode off before she could ask questions. By Friday, she had 17 students. Word was spreading. Not everyone approved. She'd heard the whispers, seen the disapproving looks, but enough parents were willing to take a chance, enough to matter. Friday afternoon, as Clara dismissed class, Mayor Hutchins appeared in the doorway. Miss Whitmore, a word? Her stomach dropped. Too soon for the month evaluation. This had to be complaints. She waited until the last student left, then turned to face him. Mayor. He walked through the room, hands behind his back, examining everything. The organized books, the clean blackboard, the student work she'd pinned to the wall. 17 students, he said finally. Yes. Including the Chen girls. Here it comes. Yes. Mrs. Blackwell says you're treating them the same as white children. Clara's jaw tightened. I'm treating them the same as students, because that's what they are. Hutchins turned to look at her. His expression was unreadable. She also says you've got Danny McCormick reading books above his age level, says you're pushing kids too hard, setting them up to fail. Danny's smart. He's been working at half his capability because no one expected more. And you think you can change that? I think I can try. The mayor was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Keep doing what you're doing, Miss Whitmore. Clara blinked. What? I said keep doing it. The school's open. Kids are learning. That's more than we've had in 4 months. He moved toward the door. Mrs. Blackwell doesn't speak for this whole town, no matter what she thinks. You've got support where it counts. I don't understand. You don't need to. Just teach. He paused at the threshold. But understand this. You're making enemies. Powerful ones. People who think education should stay in certain hands. Watch your back. Then he was gone, leaving Clara standing in the empty schoolhouse trying to process what had just happened. Support where it counts. What did that mean? She locked up and walked home through the late afternoon heat, her mind spinning. At the boarding house, she found Mrs. Fletcher sitting on the porch with a glass of lemonade. You look confused, Mrs. Fletcher observed. Mayor Hutchins just told me to keep doing what I'm doing. Interesting. Is it? I thought he'd be here to warn me off. Mrs. Fletcher gestured to the empty chair beside her. Clara sat, grateful for the shade. Hutchins is a politician, Mrs. Fletcher said. He follows power, and right now Cole Mercer's backing you. Cole pays the most taxes, employs half the ranch hands in the territory, and doesn't give his support lightly. She sipped her lemonade. That carries weight. So I'm only safe because Cole... You're safe because you're doing good work, and you've got someone powerful enough to make people think twice before interfering. Mrs. Fletcher set down her glass. Don't mistake it for total protection. Wade Cutter's still out there. His brothers ride with a rough crowd, and Mrs. Blackwell's got a mean streak a mile wide. Wonderful. But you knew this wouldn't be easy. Knowing it and living it are different things. Welcome to the frontier. Mrs. Fletcher stood. Dinner's in an hour. Wash up. Clara sat alone on the porch, watching Red Hollow settle into evening. Somewhere out there, people were angry at her, threatened by her, planning who knew what. But 17 children had learned to read better this week than last week. That had to count for something. Saturday morning, Clara was cleaning the schoolhouse, a ritual she'd started, keeping the space ready for Monday, when someone knocked on the door. She opened it to find a woman she didn't recognize. Mid-30s, worn dress, tired eyes. Miss Whitmore, I'm Sarah McCormick, Danny's mother. Please come in. Sarah entered hesitantly, looking around the schoolhouse like she'd never seen it before. I wanted to... Danny says you've been good to him, patient. Danny's a good student. He's a troublemaker, always has been. Sarah twisted her hands together. His father doesn't see the point in school. Says Danny should work the livery, learn a trade. But Danny's smart, Clara said. He could do more than work a livery. That's what scares me. Sarah looked directly at Clara. If he learns too much, he'll leave. He'll want more than Red Hollow can give him, and I'll lose my boy to some big city. Clara understood then. The fear wasn't about education itself. It was about what education might take away. Mrs. McCormick, I can't promise Danny won't leave someday. Smart people often do seek bigger opportunities. She paused. But I can promise that whatever he chooses, he'll choose it because he's educated enough to understand his options, not because he never had any. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. He talks about you at dinner, about the books you give him. He's never talked about school like that before. Then let him keep coming. His father, talk to your husband. Make him understand. Clara softened her tone. Danny deserves the chance, Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes quickly. I'll try it. I wanted you to know, not everyone thinks you're wrong. Some of us are grateful. After she left, Clara stood alone again, feeling the weight of it. Not just teaching reading and mathematics, changing lives, altering futures. That afternoon, Cole appeared at the schoolhouse on horseback leading a second horse. Can you ride? He asked without preamble. Not well. Why? Need to check fence lines on the North Range. Thought you might want to see what's out there. He dismounted. Can't spend all your time in this building. Clara looked down at her dress. I'm not exactly dressed for... Got a split skirt in the saddlebag. Elizabeth's. Should fit well enough. His expression remained neutral. No obligation, just an offer. She should say no. Proper teachers didn't go riding alone with ranchers, especially ranchers who brought books and fixed schools and looked at her like she was someone worth defending. Give me 5 minutes to change, Clara said. The split skirt fit reasonably well, though Clara felt half naked wearing it. Cole helped her mount the horse, a gentle mare named Daisy, and they rode north out of town without speaking. The land opened up quickly once they left Red Hollow behind. Rolling hills covered in dry grass, mountains in the distance, purple and imposing. Sky so big it hurt to look at. First time out here? Cole asked. First time I've really seen it. Everything before was just passing through. They rode in silence for a while. Cole checked fence posts occasionally, making notes in a small book he carried. The work was methodical, unhurried. Clara watched how he moved, economical, confident, at home in this landscape. Why did you really bring me out here? She asked finally. Cole finished examining a post before answering. Thought you might need a break. Teaching's hard work. So is ranching. Different hard. He mounted again. Also wanted to talk where nobody's listening. Clara's stomach tightened. That sounds ominous. Heard some things in town. Wade Cutter's brothers are asking questions. About you. About the school. Cole's jaw tightened. They haven't done anything yet. But they're talking. What kind of questions? When you're alone. Where you live. What time you lock up the school. He looked at her directly. They're planning something. Fear spiked cold through Clara's chest. Should I tell the sheriff? Tell him what? That some men ask questions? Cole shook his head. Dawson's not going to do anything without proof. But you should be careful. Don't walk alone after dark. Vary your routine. I refuse to live scared. I'm not asking you to live scared. I'm asking you to be smart. His voice was harder now. These aren't men who fight fair, and they've got long memories. Clara thought about Wade Cutter's face when she'd kicked him. The rage there. The humiliation. What do you think they'll do? Don't know, but I'm having one of my men keep an eye on the school at night, and on the boarding house. He said it casually, like it was nothing. Cole, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because if something happens to you, this school closes again. Those 17 kids go back to working ranches and shops. The Chen girls lose their only chance at a future that's not laundry. He paused, and I don't want that. They rode further, checking more fence lines. The sun was starting to descend, painting everything in amber light. Can I ask you something? Claire said. Sure. Why do you care so much? About the school, I mean. Cole was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Elizabeth and I wanted children. Never happened. After she died, I realized the closest I'd get was helping other people's kids have better chances. He adjusted his hat. School being closed felt like giving up. When you showed up and actually fought for it, felt like maybe things could change. I haven't changed anything yet. You showed up. That's more than anyone else did. They turned back toward town as the light faded. Clara's legs ached from riding and her face was sunburned, but she felt more settled than she had all week. Near the edge of town, Cole slowed his horse. One more thing. Tomorrow's Sunday. Usually there's a community meal after services. You should come. I'm not very religious. Neither am I anymore. But it's where people gather, where you can show face, let folks see you're part of the community. He glanced at her. Politics matter out here. More than they should. Clara wanted to argue that her teaching should speak for itself. But she was learning that the frontier operated on different rules. All right, I'll come. They rode into town as lamps were being lit. Cole helped Clara dismount near the boarding house, his hand steady on her waist. Thank you, she said, for the warning and the ride. Don't thank me yet. We don't know what's coming. But his eyes were warm when he said it. Clara changed back into her dress and returned the split skirt. Mrs. Fletcher watched from the window with an expression Clara couldn't quite read. That night, lying in bed, Clara thought about Wade Cutter's brothers watching her, about the students who were counting on her, about Cole's quiet protection that felt like more than simple community support. 3 weeks left in her trial month, 3 weeks to prove she could survive this. She fell asleep planning Monday's lessons and dreaming of fence lines stretching to infinity under an enormous sky. Sunday morning arrived with clouds threatening rain that never came. Clara wore her best dress, dark gray, high-necked, the one she'd packed thinking it would make her look serious and respectable. Now it just felt tight and uncomfortable in the Montana heat. The church stood at the south end of town, white paint peeling like everything else, but with a steeple that reached higher than any other building. People were already gathering when Clara arrived, families in their Sunday clothes talking in clusters on the steps. The conversation stopped when they saw her. Clara kept her chin up and walked forward. She recognized some faces, parents of her students, townspeople who'd watched her fight Wade Cutter, Mrs. Blackwell standing with a group of well-dressed women who looked like they'd been carved from the same block of ice. Miss Whitmore, Reverend Morrison appeared at her elbow. Glad you could join us. Thank you for having me. Service starts in 10 minutes. Afterward, we eat together in the hall behind the church. Everyone contributes something. His smile was thin. I'm sure Mrs. Fletcher told you. She hadn't, but Clara nodded anyway. Inside the church was simple. Wooden pews, plain windows, a cross at the front that looked hand-carved. Claire slid into a pew near the back, trying to be invisible. Danny arrived with his parents, the father looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sarah McCormick caught Claire's eye and smiled nervously. The Chen sisters came with their father, a small man with work-worn hands who kept his daughters close. They sat in the very back, and Clara saw how the other families shifted away slightly, creating space that felt deliberate. Cole entered last, alone, and took a seat across the aisle from Clara. He nodded to her once before fixing his attention forward. The service was exactly what Clara expected. Hymns, scripture, a sermon about perseverance that felt pointed given Reverend Morrison kept looking at her. She endured it, standing and sitting when everyone else did, mouthing words to songs she didn't know. Finally, it ended. People filed out into the sunshine, the mood shifting immediately from solemn to social. Children ran between adults, men gathered in groups discussing ranch work and weather, women organized food in the hall. Clara stood uncertain on the church steps, not quite part of any group. "You look lost." She turned to find Cole beside her, hat in hand. "I don't know the protocol," she admitted. "There isn't any, just people eating together." He gestured toward the hall. "Come on. I'll introduce you to folks who don't already hate you." "That's a short list. Shorter than you'd think, longer than you fear." The hall was already filling with people and food, long tables covered with dishes that ranged from elaborate to simple. Roasted chickens, bread, pies, vegetables, stews. The smell made Clara's stomach growl. She hadn't eaten breakfast. Cole led her to a group of men standing near the back. Ranch hands, she guessed, from their clothes and weathered faces. "Boys, this is Miss Whitmore, the teacher who kicked Wade Cutter's ass." One of them laughed. "Heard about that? You really drag him off his horse?" "Something like that," Clara said. "Good. Wade's a bastard. Excuse my language, ma'am." They talked easily, these men, asking about the school without judgment. One had a daughter in Clara's class, the quiet girl who sat in the second row. Another mentioned his nephew might start attending next week. Mrs. Fletcher appeared with a plate of food she thrust at Clara. "Eat. You look half-starved." "I'm fine. That wasn't a suggestion." Clara ate, standing with Cole in his ranch hands, listening to their conversation drift from cattle prices to weather to the railroad expansion that might or might not reach Red Hollow in the next 5 years. Normal talk. The kind that made the frontier feel less foreign. Then Mrs. Blackwell approached, flanked by 2 other women Clara didn't recognize. "Mr. Mercer, ladies." Her smile was sharp. "Miss Whitmore, I see you found company." The ranch hands shifted, suddenly uncomfortable. "Just eating, Martha," Cole said mildly. "Same as everyone." "Of course, though I did want to speak with Miss Whitmore about a concern some parents have raised." Mrs. Blackwell turned her full attention to Clara. "About the curriculum." Clara set down her plate. "What about it?" "Well, we've heard you're teaching all the children the same material, regardless of their backgrounds." She said it delicately, but the meaning was clear. "I teach reading, writing, and mathematics." "Yes, but surely you understand that different children have different capacities. The Chen girls, for instance, they barely speak English. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to have them in a separate class, so as not to slow down the other students?" Clara felt every eye in the hall turn toward them. This wasn't a private concern. This was a public challenge. "The Chen girls are learning English while learning everything else," Clara said carefully. "They're doing fine. Are they? Or are you simply lowering standards to accommodate them?" "I'm meeting each student where they are and pushing them forward. That's called teaching." Mrs. Blackwell's expression hardened. "I'm told you have Danny McCormick reading books meant for much older students. His father says the boy comes home with ideas above his station. Danny's reading at the level his intelligence deserves." "His intelligence? He's a stable boy's son. What use does he have for advanced reading?" The words hung in the air, ugly and revealing. Cole stepped forward. "Martha, that's enough." "Is it?" "I'm simply expressing concerns shared by several families, concerns about whether Miss Whitmore understands the natural order of things here." "The natural order?" Clara's voice came out harder than intended. "You mean the order where poor children stay ignorant and immigrant children know their place?" Gasps rippled through the hall. Sarah McCormick had gone pale. The Chen father was pulling his daughters toward the door. Mrs. Blackwell's face flushed red. "How dare you? How dare I what? Treat all children like they deserve an education, like they're human beings with potential?" Clara's hands were shaking, but she didn't stop. "I was hired to teach. That's what I'm doing. If you have a problem with that, take it to the school board. Oh, I will. And when they hear about this insubordination, this complete disregard for community standards. Community standards? Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. Your community had no school for 4 months. You ran off 3 teachers. You were failing your own children. So forgive me if I don't take lessons from you about standards. The silence that followed was absolute. Mrs. Blackwell looked like she'd been slapped. The other women with her had backed away slightly. Reverend Morrison was staring with something between shock and approval. Then Cole spoke, his voice quiet but carrying. Clara's right. We failed our kids. All of them. And now someone's actually trying to fix that. And half of you are fighting it because it might change things. He looked around the hall. Maybe things need changing. Cole Mercer, you of all people should understand, Mrs. Blackwell started. I understand that Elizabeth would be ashamed of this conversation. His voice went cold. She taught Sunday school to every child who showed up, regardless of who their parents were or where they came from. She believed education was a right, not a privilege for the wealthy, and she was right. Mrs. Blackwell's mouth opened and closed. Then she turned and swept out of the hall, her companions scurrying after her. The silence stretched another beat before conversation slowly resumed, quieter than before. Clara's legs felt weak. She'd just destroyed any chance of winning over the town's social leaders. 1 month to prove herself, and she'd spent half of it making powerful enemies. Sarah McCormick approached hesitantly. Miss Whitmore, I just wanted to say thank you for defending Danny. I only told the truth. I know. That's why it matters. Sarah glanced at her husband, who was watching from across the room with an unreadable expression. Tom's coming around, slowly. But what you said about Danny deserving better, he heard it. After Sarah left, several other parents approached. The Chen father bowed slightly and said something in Chinese that Clara didn't understand but felt grateful for anyway. A woman whose son had just started attending thanked her for being fair. A farmer said his daughter was learning more in 2 weeks than she had in the previous year. Small victories, but they felt fragile against the weight of Mrs. Blackwell's fury. Cole waited until the hall cleared before speaking. That was either very brave or very stupid. I'm thinking stupid. No, necessary. He picked up both their plates, started toward the washing area. Someone needed to say it. I'm glad it was you. You backed me up. That wasn't necessary. Yes, it was. He set the plates down, turned to face her fully. Martha Blackwell's been running this town's social order for 10 years. She needed to hear that it's not working anymore. She'll make trouble for me. She was already making trouble. Now at least you're not fighting alone. Clara looked at him. This rancher who kept showing up, kept supporting her, kept putting himself in the line of fire. Why are you doing this? I told you. The school matters. It's more than that. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then, maybe it is. Maybe I'm tired of watching good people get pushed around by those who think money and social standing mean more than decency. He paused. Or maybe I just think you're worth fighting for. The words settled between them, heavier than Clara expected. Before she could respond, Danny appeared in the doorway. Miss Whitmore, my pa wants to talk to you. Tom McCormick stood outside, big and uncomfortable in his Sunday clothes. He looked at Clara like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. My boy says you think he's smart. Clara chose her words carefully. Danny has a good mind. He could go far if he keeps learning. Go far? You mean leave Red Hollow? I mean have choices. What he does with them is up to him. Tom worked his jaw thinking. His ma wants him in school. I figured it was a waste of time. But then he reads me something from one of those books you gave him, reads it perfect, understands what it means, and I think maybe I don't know everything. None of us do. If he keeps coming, keeps learning, you'll push him, not let him coast? I'll push all of them, Danny included. Tom nodded slowly. All right then, but if he starts thinking he's too good for honest work, education doesn't make honest work beneath anyone. It just means they understand why they're doing it and have the skills to do it better. Another nod. Then Tom stuck out his hand. Clara shook it, feeling calluses similar to Cole's. Thank you, Miss Whitmore. After he left, Clara leaned against the church wall, suddenly exhausted. The confrontation with Mrs. Blackwell, the support from unexpected corners, Tom McCormick's grudging approval. It was too much, too fast. Cole appeared beside her again. You all right? I just made an enemy of the most powerful woman in town. You made allies too. That counts. Does it count enough? We'll find out. He looked at the sky, where clouds were gathering again. Storm's coming. Real one this time. You should get home. They walked together through town, the streets quiet in the late afternoon. Most people were still at the church or already home. Clara felt exposed, like everyone was watching from behind their curtains. At the boarding house, Cole stopped. What you did today, standing up for those kids, it took courage. Or stupidity. Still haven't decided which. Can it be both? He almost smiled. Get some rest. Tomorrow you've got students who need you. Clara watched him walk away, then climbed the steps to find Mrs. Fletcher waiting inside. Heard you gave Martha Blackwell a piece of your mind. News travels fast. Always does. Mrs. Fletcher handed her a cup of tea. You made the right call. Martha needed someone to tell her the truth. The truth might cost me my job. Then it wasn't the right job. Mrs. Fletcher sat down heavily. But I don't think it'll come to that. You've got more support than you realize. Clara sipped the tea, feeling it warm her from the inside. Outside, the first drops of rain began falling, pattering against the windows. That night, she lay in bed listening to the storm intensify. Thunder rolled across the mountains. Lightning illuminated her small room in brief flashes. The rain sounded like it might tear the roof off. She thought about the students who'd be walking to school tomorrow in the mud. About Mrs. Blackwell's face when Clara had challenged her. About Cole saying she was worth fighting for. Sleep came eventually, restless and full of half-formed dreams. Monday morning dawned gray and wet. Clara arrived at the school to find it already occupied. 23 students. 6 new faces, including 2 older girls who looked terrified and determined in equal measure. They'd heard about the confrontation at church, apparently. Heard that Miss Whitmore defended students against Mrs. Blackwell. Word traveled fast indeed. Morning, everyone, Clara said, shaking rain from her coat. Let's get started. She taught through the morning, the sound of rain constant on the roof. The new students were behind, some barely literate, but they were eager. That mattered more than skill level. At lunch, Danny approached her desk while the others ate outside under the porch overhang. Miss Whitmore, I wanted to say what you said to Mrs. Blackwell about me having intelligence. He looked uncomfortable. No one said that before. It's true. You're one of the smartest students I've ever taught. My pa talked to me last night, said he was proud. I can't remember the last time he said that. Clara's throat tightened. Then keep giving him reasons to say it. I will. I promise. After Danny left, Clara sat at her desk, feeling the weight of responsibility settle deeper. These weren't just students anymore. They were children betting their futures on her ability to stay standing against people who wanted her gone. The afternoon session was interrupted by a knock on the door. Sheriff Dawson stood outside, rain dripping from his hat. Miss Whitmore, need a word. Clara's stomach dropped. She told the students to continue their reading and stepped outside. What's wrong? Might be nothing. Might be something. Dawson looked uncomfortable. Wade Cutter's brothers were seen near the school last night. My deputy ran them off, but they made some threats. What kind of threats? The kind where they mentioned fire and school teachers who don't know their place. He shifted his weight. I can't arrest them for talking, but I can tell you to be careful. Cole already warned me. Cole's got good instincts. Listen to him. Dawson glanced at the schoolhouse. You're doing good work here. Be a shame if something happened to it. After he left, Clara stood in the rain trying to calm her racing heart. Fire. They were talking about burning the school. She went back inside, forced herself to teach the rest of the afternoon like nothing had happened. But she kept glancing at the windows, watching for movement in the rain. When she dismissed class, she locked every window, checked the stove twice, made sure nothing flammable was near any heat source. Cole was waiting outside with his horse. Heard Dawson came by. How do you already know that? Same way you know everything in a small town. Someone saw and told someone else. He dismounted. I'm posting men to watch the school every night, 2 at a time, rotating shifts. Cole, you can't. Already done. They start tonight. His expression left no room for argument. This isn't negotiable. Clara wanted to protest. Wanted to say she could handle it herself. But the truth was, she was scared. Not of fighting, she'd already proven she could do that, but of losing. Of watching everything she'd built burn because men with grudges had longer memories than patience. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me. Just keep teaching." That became the pattern for the next week. Clara taught during the day, hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow. Cole's ranch hands stood watch at night, keeping fires and barrels to stay warm, their presence a deterrent to whatever Wade Cutter's brothers might have planned. The students kept coming, 25 by Wednesday, 27 by Friday. And the learning continued. Lily Chen read her first full paragraph in English. Danny finished a book meant for 16-year-olds and asked for another. The youngest children mastered their alphabet, small victories that felt enormous. Friday afternoon, as Clara was cleaning the blackboard, the door opened. The school board walked in. Mayor Hutchins, Reverend Morrison, and two men Clara didn't recognize. Mrs. Blackwell was conspicuously absent. "Miss Whitmore," Hutchins removed his hat. "We need to talk about your performance." Clara's hand tightened on the eraser. "It's been 3 weeks. You said a month." "Circumstances have changed." Hutchins looked around the clean, organized schoolroom. "We've had complaints, serious ones, about your methods, your attitude, your treatment of certain families. From Mrs. Blackwell, among others." He paused. "We've also had praise. Parents saying their children are learning more than they have in years. Families who pulled their kids from school before saying they're coming back." Clara waited, barely breathing. "The question is whether the good outweighs the bad," Hutchins continued. "Whether you're helping this community or dividing it." "Education shouldn't be divisive," Clara said. "Teaching children to read isn't taking sides. It is when you challenge the social order while doing it. Then maybe the social order needs challenging." Reverend Morrison cleared his throat. "Miss Whitmore, I appreciate your passion, but this town has functioned a certain way for a long time. Change comes slowly here. Change doesn't come at all if no one pushes for it." The two other board members exchanged glances. One of them spoke for the first time. "How many students do you have now?" 27. "And 4 months ago?" 0. He nodded slowly. "Seems like the families are voting with their feet." Hutchins sighed. "Miss Whitmore, you're retained, for now. But understand, you're on thin ice. One more incident like Sunday's confrontation, and we'll have to reconsider." Relief flooded through Clara so fast she felt dizzy. "I understand." "Do you?" "Because I'm not sure you do." Hutchins moved closer. "You're good at this, the teaching part. But you're terrible at the politics. And out here, politics matter just as much as performance." "I'll try to do better." "See that you do." He turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. Cole Mercer spoke to me this morning. Said if we let you go, he'd pull his support from half the town businesses. That kind of pressure. It matters. You should know that." After they left, Clara sat at her desk shaking. She'd kept her job, barely, by the thinnest of margins and because Cole had threatened economic consequences. She should feel grateful. Instead, she felt angry. She locked up the school and walked straight to Cole's ranch, 3 miles north of town. She'd never been there before, but she knew the way from their ride last week. The ranch sprawled across a valley, buildings clustered around a main house that looked solid and well-maintained. Horses grazed in corrals. Ranch hands worked near the barn. One of them directed her to the house. Cole answered the door himself, surprise crossing his face. "Clara? What's wrong?" "You threatened the mayor." Understanding dawned. "He told you." "You can't keep fighting my battles for me." "I'm not fighting them for you. I'm fighting them with you." Cole stepped outside, closing the door. "There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I only kept my job because you have money and influence. You kept your job because you're a good teacher with 27 students who need you. I just made sure the board remembered that." Clara wanted to argue, but the word stuck. Because he was right. The students did need her, and she'd been about to lose them because she couldn't keep her mouth shut around Mrs. Blackwell. "I hate needing help," she said finally. "I know, but everyone needs help sometimes." Cole leaned against the porch railing. "Out here, nobody survives alone. Not really. You can either fight that truth or accept it." "What would you do?" "I'd accept it." Then I'd make myself useful to the people helping me so it doesn't feel so one-sided. Clara looked at him. This man who kept showing up, kept supporting her, kept putting himself at risk for a school he didn't even have children attending. "Why do you care so much?" she asked again. "And don't say it's just about the school." Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because watching you fight for those kids reminds me what courage looks like. Reminds me there are things worth standing up for even when it's hard." He paused. "And because I've been alone for 3 years. And I'm tired of it." The honesty in those words hit Clara harder than any of Mrs. Blackwell's barbs. "Cole, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know." He straightened. "You should get back to town before dark. Storm's coming in again." Clara walked back slowly, her mind spinning. Cole's admission, the school board's conditional approval, the constant threat of Wade Cutter's brothers. Everything felt precarious, balanced on a knife's edge. At the boarding house, Mrs. Fletcher was cooking dinner. "Board came by," she said without preamble. "I know. I kept my job. Heard that too. Also heard you went to Cole's ranch after." Clara shot her a look. "Does anything stay private in this town?" "Not much." Mrs. Fletcher stirred a pot. "He's a good man. Been through hell and come out decent on the other side. Don't take that lightly." "I'm not taking anything lightly. I'm trying to survive my first month of teaching." Life's more than just surviving. Clara didn't have an answer to that. That night, another storm rolled through. Clara lay in bed listening to thunder and thinking about students who needed her, about enemies who wanted her gone, about Cole saying he was tired of being alone. She was tired too. Tired of fighting. Tired of proving herself. Tired of being afraid. But more than tired, she was determined. 3 weeks had passed. 1 week left in her trial month. 1 week to solidify what she'd built, to prove the school could last, to show that changing things was worth the cost. She fell asleep planning lessons and dreaming of fires that never quite caught, burning in the distance while she stood guard with water that never ran out. The 4th week started with bitter cold that cut through every layer Clara wore. December in Montana meant mornings where her breath frosted the air inside the schoolhouse until she got the stove going, meant students arriving with red cheeks and fingers too numb to hold pencils properly. But they came. All 27 of them, plus 3 more by Wednesday. Clara had stopped being surprised by growth. The school had become something the town couldn't ignore anymore. Not a failed experiment, but a living thing that kept expanding despite everyone who wanted it to shrivel up and die. Tuesday afternoon, she was teaching the older students basic geometry when Noah Briggs walked through the door. Clara had seen him around town, a boy of maybe 12 with dark hair that fell in his eyes and clothes that had been mended too many times. He worked at the livery with Danny's father, mucking stalls and hauling feed. She'd never seen him at school. Every student stopped working to stare. Noah stood in the doorway looking like he might bolt. "I heard. Someone said you teach anyone. Don't matter if they're behind." Clara set down her chalk. "That's right. Come in." "I can't pay nothing, and I can only come 3 days a week. Work the other days." 3 days is better than no days. Find a seat." Noah moved to the very back, trying to make himself invisible. The other students slowly returned to their work, but Clara saw Danny watching the new arrival with something between recognition and pity. After dismissing everyone else, Clara approached Noah's desk. "Can you read it all?" Some. "Not much." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Letters get mixed up in my head. I'm probably too stupid for this." "You're not stupid. Some people's brains work different with letters. We'll figure it out." She pulled out a basic reader. "Take this home. Tomorrow we'll start from the beginning." Noah took the book like it might break. "Why are you being nice to me?" "Because you walked through that door asking to learn. That takes more courage than most people have." After he left, Clara stood alone in the empty schoolhouse, feeling the weight of it. Noah reminded her why she'd come here. Not for the students who had everything already, for the ones who had nothing but still showed up anyway. She locked up as the sun was setting, earlier each day now that winter was coming. Cole's ranch hands were already taking their positions for the night watch. 2 men with rifles and heavy coats, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Evening, Miss Whitmore," one of them called. "You don't have to do this, you know." "Boss says we do, and what the boss says goes," he grinned. "Besides, it's easier than checking fence lines in this cold." Clara walked back through town, past houses with lamplight in the windows and smoke rising from chimneys. Normal evening life that she still felt separate from. She was tolerated now, maybe even accepted by some, but not quite part of the fabric yet. At the boarding house, she found Mrs. Fletcher in the kitchen with a stranger, a woman perhaps 40, well-dressed, with sharp eyes that assessed Clara immediately. "Miss Whitmore, this is Catherine Wells. She's visiting from Helena." Catherine stood, offering her hand. "I've heard interesting things about you." Clara shook it warily. "What kind of things?" "That you're teaching immigrant children alongside everyone else. That you stood up to Martha Blackwell in front of half the town. That you fought an outlaw in the street your first day here." Catherine's smile was amused. "You've made quite an impression." "I'm just teaching school. You're doing more than that, whether you know it or not." Catherine sat back down. "I work with the Territorial Education Association. We're trying to establish standards, get funding for frontier schools. Your success here could matter beyond Red Hollow." Clara sat slowly. "My success isn't certain yet. But it's happening. 30 students from nothing in a month? That's remarkable." Catherine pulled out a notebook. "I'd like to write about it. About your methods, your challenges. It could help other teachers in other towns." "I don't want attention." "Too late for that." Catherine's expression turned serious. "Listen, I know what you're up against. Small-town politics, people who think education should stay in certain hands. But you're proving something important, that good teaching can overcome that. Let me document it." Clara looked at Mrs. Fletcher, who shrugged. "Your choice. But Catherine's been fighting for frontier education for 10 years. She's trustworthy." "I'll think about it," Clara said finally. Catherine stayed for dinner asking questions about curriculum and student progress. She was smart and genuinely interested, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that being watched and documented would somehow jinx everything. After Catherine left for her hotel, Clara sat with Mrs. Fletcher on the porch, despite the cold. "You don't trust easily," Mrs. Fletcher observed. "Can you blame me?" "No, but not everyone's out to hurt you. Some people actually want to help." "Like Cole?" Mrs. Fletcher smiled. "Especially like Cole. That man's been half in love with you since you kicked Wade Cutter." Clara's face heated. We're not yet maybe. But you're heading that direction whether you admit it or not." Mrs. Fletcher stood. "Don't overthink it. Life's too short and the frontier's too hard to waste time pretending you don't care about someone who clearly cares about you." Clara sat alone in the cold, thinking about Cole's admission that he was tired of being alone. About the way he kept showing up. About how her chest tightened when she saw him. She was falling for him. Had been for weeks, probably. The realization didn't shock her as much as it should have. What shocked her was how much it terrified her. Wednesday morning brought the first snow. Not much, just a dusting that made everything look cleaner than it was. The students arrived covered in white, shaking it off like puppies. Noah came for his second day looking less frightened. Clara worked with him during lunch while the others played outside and discovered he was right. Letters did scramble in his head in ways that made traditional reading nearly impossible. What if we try something different? She wrote words in large letters, spacing them oddly. "Does this help?" Noah squinted at the page. Yeah, it does." They worked that way for 30 minutes, Noah reading slowly but successfully. When he got through a full paragraph, he looked up with wonder on his face. "I did it." "You did." "I really did it." He read it again, faster this time. "Why didn't anyone show me this before?" "Because most teachers don't know how. I barely know how. But we'll figure it out together." After Noah left, Danny approached. "That was good, what you did for him." "Just teaching." "No, it's more than that." Danny shifted his weight. "My pa talked to me again last night, about the future. He wants to know if I'd consider going to a real school? In Helena, maybe." Clara's heart sank and soared at the same time. "What did you say?" "That I'd think about it. I never thought—" He trailed off. "You made him believe I could be more than what he is. That's not nothing." After school, Clara was grading papers when Cole appeared in the doorway. She'd started to recognize his footsteps, the particular way he knocked. "You're getting predictable," she said without looking up. "Is that bad?" "Depends on the day." She finished marking a paper. "What brings you by?" "Wanted to check on you. Heard Catherine Wells was in town asking questions." "News really does travel instantly here." Cole entered, removing his hat. She's got a good reputation. If she wants to write about the school, it could help. Or it could paint a target on my back for people who don't want attention on what I'm doing. Target's already there. He sat on the edge of a desk. Wade Cutter's brothers are still around, making noise about unfinished business. Clara's hand tightened on her pen. Your men haven't seen anything? Not yet, but they're watching. He paused. I'm worried about the school Christmas program. What Christmas program? The one every school does. Songs, recitations, families gathering. It's tradition. He looked at her directly. It's also when the whole town will be here, including people who might want to cause trouble. Clara hadn't even thought about a Christmas program. She'd been too focused on basic teaching to consider community events. When is it supposed to happen? Usually the last Friday before Christmas, 2 weeks from now. 2 weeks. She had 2 weeks to prepare something that would showcase her students' progress while potentially providing cover for people who wanted to destroy everything. That's not much time. No. But it matters. Parents expect it. The board will judge you on it. And it's a chance to show the whole town what these kids can actually do. Clara looked around the schoolhouse, imagining it filled with families. Mrs. Blackwell watching for mistakes. The board evaluating her performance. Wade Cutter's brothers lurking outside. What if it goes wrong? Then we handle it, together. Cole stood. You're not alone in this, Clara. I wish you'd believe that. She met his eyes. I'm starting to. Something shifted in his expression. Good, because I meant what I said at the ranch, about being tired of being alone. Cole, you don't have to say anything now, just think about it. He put his hat back on. I'll see you at Sunday services? If I survive the next week, you will. You're tougher than you think. After he left, Clara sat in the quiet schoolhouse trying to organize her thoughts. A Christmas program, Catherine Wells documenting her work. Cole's feelings that mirrored her own complicated ones. Threats still lurking in the shadows. Everything was accelerating, converging towards something she couldn't quite see yet. Thursday morning, she announced the program to her students. We'll do songs and recitations. Show your families what you've learned. She tried to sound confident. Everyone participates. No exceptions. Lily Chen raised her hand tentatively. Even us? Our English not good. Especially you. Your English is better than you think, and this is a chance to prove it. The students erupted into nervous chatter. Clara spent the rest of the week organizing them into groups, selecting material appropriate for different skill levels. The youngest would recite the alphabet and simple poems. The middle group would read passages from their readers. The oldest, including Danny, Noah, and the Chen sisters, would perform a short play about frontier life. It was ambitious, maybe too ambitious, but Clara was tired of playing it safe. Friday afternoon, Catherine Wells returned. I'd like to attend your Christmas program, she said. Document how frontier schools celebrate. Would that be all right? Clara wanted to say no. Having an outside observer felt like adding pressure to an already explosive situation, but Catherine's earnest interest wore down her resistance. Fine, but you're just watching, not interfering. Understood. That weekend, Clara worked with students who volunteered extra time to practice. The Chen sisters struggled with pronunciation but persisted. Noah fought with reading his lines but refused to give up. Danny took his role as narrator seriously, helping younger students when they stumbled. Sunday's church service felt tense. Mrs. Blackwell sat with her faction, whispering and shooting dark looks toward Clara. But more families than before smiled at her. Several parents thanked her for the program preparations. The town was fracturing along lines Clara hadn't meant to draw. Those who supported education for everyone versus those who wanted to maintain the old order. Cole found her after services. My men reported activity near the school last night. Someone watching, but they left when challenged. Clara's stomach twisted. Wade's brothers? Can't prove it, but probably. His jaw tightened. I'm doubling the watch for the next 2 weeks. And I'll be at the program myself. You don't have to. Yes, I do, because if something happens, I want to be there. He softened slightly. Besides, I want to see what you've accomplished. These kids have come far. Monday brought bitter cold and more snow. Students arrived bundled so heavily Clara could barely recognize them. But they came, every single one, because the program mattered now. It had become important beyond just a school event. It was proof that they belonged, that they could achieve something worth celebrating. Tuesday afternoon, while students practiced their songs, Sheriff Dawson appeared. "Need to talk to you," he said quietly. Clara stepped outside into the cold. "What's wrong?" "Wade Cutter's being released tomorrow. Judge decided 4 weeks was enough for attempted robbery." Dawson looked uncomfortable. "He'll be out. His brothers will be emboldened. And the timing with your program, you think they'll try something. I think they're angry and stupid. Bad combination." He adjusted his gun belt. "I'll have deputies nearby during the program, but there's only so much we can do if they decide to cause trouble." After Dawson left, Clara stood in the snow trying to control her breathing. Wade Cutter free. His brother still making threats. The program in 10 days. She went back inside and kept teaching because she didn't know what else to do. Wednesday, Cole brought supplies. Lumber and nails, fabric for costumes, even a small evergreen tree one of his ranch hands had cut. "For decorating," he said simply. "Programs need decorations." The students descended on the tree with enthusiasm, stringing paper chains and hanging ornaments they made from scraps. Their laughter filled the schoolhouse, warming it more than the stove ever could. Clara watched them work. These children who'd become more than students. They were her purpose, her reason for staying when everything said to run. Thursday brought another visitor, Mayor Hutchins, looking troubled. "Miss Whitmore, I need to be direct with you." He closed the door behind him. "Some board members are concerned about the program. They think you're making it too egalitarian. It's a school program. All the students participate. That's what concerns them. Having immigrant children performing alongside everyone else, poor kids sharing the stage with wealthy families' children." He sighed. "Mrs. Blackwell is pushing for you to separate the performances by social class." Clara felt rage build hot in her chest. "Absolutely not." "I expected that answer, and personally I agree with you, but politically, I don't care about the politics. These children have worked hard. They're performing together as a school, as a community. If the board doesn't like it, they can fire me." "They might. Then let them. But I won't divide these kids for the comfort of people who think some children matter more than others." Hutchins studied her for a long moment. "You realize you're risking everything, your job, your reputation, any future in education." "I realize I'm doing what's right." A smile ghosted across his face. "Elizabeth Mercer would have said the same thing. No wonder Cole's so protective of you." After he left, Clara sat at her desk feeling the weight of her defiance. She'd just dared the board to fire her over a Christmas program. Maybe Mrs. Fletcher was right. She was terrible at politics. But she couldn't compromise on this. Not anymore. Friday afternoon, as students practiced their final rehearsal, Clara heard raised voices outside. She went to the door to find Tom McCormick arguing with another man she didn't recognize. "Not right, having Danny up there with the likes of them," the stranger was saying. "My boy earned his place," Tom shot back. "And I'll be damned if you tell me he can't perform because you think he's not good enough." Clara stepped onto the porch. "Is there a problem?" The stranger turned. "Yeah, there's a problem. You've got kids mixing together who shouldn't be mixing. My daughter doesn't need to be on stage with immigrant girls and stable boys." "Then your daughter doesn't need to participate," Clara said coldly. "The program is for students who want to show what they've learned. If you're more concerned about social standing than education, you're welcome to keep her home." "You can't talk to me like—" "I can and I will. This is my school, these are my students, and if you don't like how I run things, take it up with the board." She held his stare. "But right now, you're on school property during instruction time. Leave." The man looked like he might argue, then thought better of it. He left, muttering threats under his breath. Tom approached Clara after he'd gone. "Thank you for defending Danny." "I defend all my students. That's the job." "Still, it matters." He paused. "Sarah wanted me to tell you we're proud of him. Really proud. Whatever happens at the program, we'll be there cheering." After school, Clara locked up feeling drained. 1 week until the program. 7 days to hold everything together while forces pulled it apart. She walked back through town in the early darkness, past houses where families were eating dinner, past the saloon where men's laughter spilled into the street, past the church standing silent and judging. At the boarding house, Cole was waiting on the porch. "Heard you threw someone off school property today," he said. Clara sighed. "Who told you?" "Half the town, probably. Word travels. He wanted me to separate the students by class. I refused." "Good." Cole stood. "Walk with me?" They walked to the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open land and the mountains stood black against the early stars. "You know what's coming, don't you?" Cole said quietly. "The program's going to be a flashpoint. Everything that's been building will come to a head." "I know. And you're still going through with it." "I have to. These kids have worked too hard. They deserve to be seen." Cole stopped walking, turned to face her. "When this is over, whatever happens, I want you to know something." Clara's heart hammered. "What?" "You've changed this town, changed me, made me remember what fighting for something feels like." He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm in love with you, Clara. Have been since you stood bloodied in the street refusing to back down." The words hung in the frozen air between them. "Cole, Clara's voice caught. "I can't think about this right now, not with everything he—" "I know. I'm not asking for an answer. I just needed you to know, before the program, before whatever happens next." He stepped back. "So you understand that no matter what, you're not fighting alone." He walked her back to the boarding house in silence, then left without another word. Clara lay in bed that night, Cole's confession echoing in her mind. She should be focused on the program, on her students, on surviving the next week. Instead, she was thinking about a rancher who'd lost his wife and found purpose in protecting a stubborn teacher, about how his presence had become as necessary as breathing, about how she was falling in love with him too, even though the timing was terrible and the future uncertain. Sleep came late, restless and full of half-formed dreams about fire and fighting and Cole's winter sky eyes watching her stand her ground. The next week blurred past in a haze of final preparations. Students practiced until they could recite their parts in their sleep. Clara sewed costumes from donated fabric. The schoolhouse was cleaned and decorated until it looked almost festive. Catherine Wells observed it all, taking notes but staying out of the way. "This is remarkable," she told Clara Wednesday afternoon. "The community investment, the student dedication. This is what frontier education should look like. Tell that to the people who want me fired." "I will. In my report to the Territorial Education Committee." Thursday evening, Cole appeared with his ranch hands carrying benches he'd had built. "For seating," he explained. "Can't have everyone standing." They arranged the benches in rows facing a makeshift stage the students had constructed. The schoolhouse transformed from a simple classroom into something that almost resembled a theater. "It looks good," Clara admitted. "It looks like hope," Cole said quietly. "That's what you've built here. Hope for kids who didn't have any before." That night, Clara couldn't sleep at all. Tomorrow was the program. Tomorrow, everything she'd worked for would either prove itself or collapse under the weight of people's hatred and fear. She rose before dawn, dressed carefully in her best dress, and walked to the school in the early light. The building stood quiet and waiting, decorated and ready. Clara unlocked the door and stood at the front, imagining it filled with people. Some who'd come to celebrate, others who'd come to judge, maybe some who'd come to destroy. "Whatever happens," she whispered to the empty room, "we tried. We showed them children matter, all children." The sun rose slowly, painting the mountains gold and pink. Students began arriving early, nervous and excited. Parents came to help with final preparations. Catherine Wells set up her observation post in the back corner. By 6 o'clock, an hour before the program, the schoolhouse was already filling. Families crowded onto the benches. People stood along the walls. The whole town, it seemed, had come to see what the controversial new teacher and her misfit students would produce. Clara stood backstage, really just behind a curtain the students had hung, watching them prepare. Lily Chen fixed her sister's hair. Noah practiced his lines under his breath. Danny helped the younger kids get into costume. They were ready as they'd ever be. Cole found her in the chaos. "Whatever happens tonight, I'm proud of you, of all of this. Tell me that after it's over." "I'll tell you now and later." He squeezed her hand once, then disappeared into the crowd. 7 o'clock came. The audience settled. Clara stepped onto the stage, heart hammering so hard she thought everyone must hear it. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. Tonight, these students will show you what they've learned in 1 month of school. Some were behind when they started. Some are still learning English. But all of them have worked harder than you can imagine. I'm proud of every single one. She stepped back. The curtain opened. The youngest students filed onto the stage, faces shining with nervous pride. And the program began. The youngest children stood in a wobbly line across the stage, 7 of them ranging from 6 to 8 years old. Clara could see their knees shaking from where she stood in the wings. Little Emma Rodriguez, barely 7, looked like she might cry. But then Danny stepped forward as narrator, his voice clear and steady. The alphabet is the foundation of learning. These students didn't know their letters a month ago. Listen to what they can do now. The children recited together, voices gaining strength as they went. A is for apple, B is for bear, C is for courage. They stumbled on a few letters, recovered, pushed forward. By the time they reached Z, they were almost shouting it, proud and defiant. The audience applauded. Not polite applause, real appreciation. Clara saw Tom McCormick clapping hard, Sarah wiping tears. Even some of the skeptical families looked impressed. The children filed off, replaced by the middle group. They read passages from their primers, stories about frontier life and perseverance. Rose Chen read in careful, accented English about a girl learning to be brave. Her voice wavered but didn't break. When she finished, her father stood up and clapped, his face transformed by pride. Others joined him, the applause building until Rose was smiling through her own tears. Then came the play, the older students' ambitious piece about settlers building a community. Danny narrated while the others acted out scenes of conflict and cooperation. Lily Chen played an immigrant shopkeeper teaching English to frontier children. Noah was a ranch hand who learned to read so he could write letters home. The message wasn't subtle. Clara had helped them write it deliberately, a story about people different from each other choosing to build something together anyway. She watched the audience's reactions. Some families beamed, others shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Blackwell's face had gone stony. The play reached its climax, the moment when the settlers faced a crisis and had to decide whether to help each other or fragment into competing groups. The student playing the town leader stepped forward. "We're stronger together," Danny read as narrator. "Doesn't matter where we came from or what we look like. We're all trying to survive the same harsh land. We're all building the same future." The student settlers joined hands across the stage, standing united. The curtain closed. For a moment, silence. Clara's heart stopped. Then applause erupted, loud, genuine, sustained. People were standing. Not everyone, but enough. Tom McCormick whistled. The Chen father was openly crying now. Cole stood near the back, clapping with an expression Clara couldn't quite read. The students came back for a bow, holding hands, just like in the play. They were grinning, some crying, all of them transformed by accomplishment. Clara stepped onto the stage as they filed off. "Thank you all for—" The schoolhouse door slammed open. Wade Cutter stood in the doorway, his brothers flanking him. All 3 wore guns. Wade's face was twisted with rage barely held in check. The applause died instantly. Sheriff Dawson moved toward them, hand on his weapon. "Wade, this isn't the time." "Shut up, Dawson." Wade's eyes locked on Clara. "You think you can humiliate me? Make me a joke in front of the whole territory?" Clara's mouth went dry. Around her, parents were pulling children back, creating distance. But the students, her students, had frozen on the stage behind her. "Wade, leave." Clara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "This is a school event. You're not welcome." "Not welcome?" Wade laughed, ugly and sharp. "This is my town, my people. And you come here with your fancy Boston ideas thinking you can change everything? I'm teaching children to read, that's all." "That's not all. You are teaching them they're all equal, that poor kids and rich kids, white kids and Chinese kids, that they're all the same." He spat. "They're not, and everyone knows it." Cole had moved closer, positioning himself between Wade and the stage. "You made your point. Now leave before this gets worse." "Worse for who?" Wade's hand drifted toward his gun. "I've been watching this place for weeks, watching her think she's safe because you've got your ranch hands playing guard. But you can't protect her forever. Don't need forever, just need tonight." Cole's voice was deadly calm. "Walk away, Wade." The tension stretched like wire pulled too tight. Clara could hear her own heartbeat, could see the students behind her terrified and confused, could feel the whole town holding its breath. Then Lily Chen stepped forward. "Please," she said, her accent thick but her voice clear. "Please don't hurt Miss Whitmore. She good teacher. She help us." Wade's attention snapped to her. You're one of those Chinese girls she's so proud of. Think you're equal to my niece because you can read a few words?" "I think we all people," Lily said quietly. "All deserve learn." Wade's face darkened. He took a step forward, and Clara moved without thinking, stepping between him and Lily, just like she'd done with the outlaw on her first day. Except this time, she knew what she was risking. "You want to threaten someone? Threaten me. Leave the children alone." Brave talk for a woman with no gun. "She's not alone." The voice came from the back. Clara turned to see Danny's father standing, along with a dozen other men, ranch hands, shopkeepers, workers from the livery and mill. Not all of them, but enough. Tom McCormick's voice was steady. "These kids have worked hard. They deserve their night. You got a problem with the teacher, you take it up tomorrow, not now." Wade looked around the room, calculating odds he didn't like. 3 against maybe 15. His brothers were shifting nervously. "This isn't over," Wade said to Clara. "You think you've won something, but you haven't. This town doesn't change just because you want it to." "Maybe it does," Cole said quietly. "Maybe it already has." Wade stared at him, at Clara, at the students clustered protectively behind their teacher. Then he turned and shoved his way out, his brothers following. The door slammed shut. Nobody moved for a long moment. Then Rose Chen started crying, and suddenly all the younger students were crying, the fear finally breaking through. Parents rushed forward, gathering children, offering comfort. Clara stood frozen, adrenaline crashing through her system. She just put herself between an armed outlaw and her students. Again. Apparently she hadn't learned anything about self-preservation. Cole was beside her suddenly, his hand on her shoulder. "You all right?" "I don't know," her voice shook. For a second I thought, "I know, but you didn't back down." His grip tightened. "That took more courage than anything I've ever seen." Mayor Hutchins appeared, looking shaken. "Miss Whitmore, I apologize. That should never have happened." "Is she in danger?" Catherine Wells had her notebook out, documenting everything. "Will he come back?" "My men will be watching," Cole said before Clara could answer. "And I'll talk to Dawson about getting Wade out of town permanently." The crowd was fragmenting now. Some families leaving quickly, others clustering to talk in urgent whispers. Mrs. Blackwell had already gone, her disapproval somehow louder than her presence. But Tom McCormick approached with Sarah and Danny. "Miss Whitmore, we wanted to say what you did tonight, standing up for these kids. That's real teaching, the kind that matters." "Danny was wonderful," Clara managed. "You should be proud." "We are." Tom extended his hand. "And we're grateful." The Chen father came next, bowing low, speaking in Chinese that Clara didn't understand but felt anyway. His daughters translated haltingly. "Thank you, brave, good person." One by one, families approached. Not all of them, but more than Clara expected. Parents thanking her, students hugging her, people saying they'd be back Monday. Their children would keep coming. The school mattered too much to let fear win. By the time the schoolhouse emptied, Clara felt wrung out and hollow. The decorations still hung cheerfully, the stage still stood ready, but the joy of the program had been tainted by Wade's threats. Cole stayed after everyone left, helping her clean up while Catherine Wells finished her notes. "That was extraordinary," Catherine said finally. "Everything about tonight, the students' performances, your defense of them, the community choosing sides. This is exactly what I needed to document." "It doesn't feel extraordinary. It feels messy and complicated." "The best things usually are." Catherine closed her notebook. "I'll be writing this up for the territorial committee. Your methods, your courage, the way you've built something real here. It'll help other teachers facing similar challenges." After she left, Cole and Clara sat on the stage, feet dangling over the edge. "You scared me tonight," Cole said quietly, "when you stepped between Wade and Lily. I scared myself. But you did it anyway." He turned to look at her. "That's who you are. Someone who doesn't calculate safety before doing what's right." Is that a compliment or criticism? "Both, maybe." He was quiet for a moment. I meant what I said last week about being in love with you. Clara's heart hammered. Cole, let me finish. I know the timing's terrible. I know you've got enough to worry about. But watching you tonight, seeing you protect those kids without hesitation, I realized I can't keep quiet about it anymore. He took her hand. I love you, Clara Whitmore. I love your stubbornness and your courage and the way you fight for people who can't fight for themselves. And I want to spend whatever time I have left on this earth making sure you never have to fight alone. Clara looked at their joined hands, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. I'm terrified. Of Wade? Of this? Of you? Of caring about someone when everything feels so uncertain? Life's always uncertain, especially out here. Cole's thumb traced circles on her palm. But I'd rather face uncertain with you than certain without you. Clara thought about the last month, how Cole had shown up again and again, supporting without smothering, protecting without controlling, how his presence had become essential, how she'd stopped being able to imagine Red Hollow without him in it. I'm falling in love with you too, she said quietly. Have been for weeks. Maybe since you said I was the strongest woman you'd ever seen. Cole's face transformed, hope lighting his features. Yeah? Yeah, even though it's complicated and probably stupid and I have no idea how this ends. It ends with us figuring it out together. He leaned closer. If you'll have me. Clara kissed him instead of answering, pouring all her fear and hope and desperate affection into it. He kissed back like she was water, and he'd been dying of thirst, gentle and urgent at once. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara laughed shakily. Well, that's new? Good new? Terrifying new, but good. They sat together on the stage, Clara leaning against Cole's shoulder, both of them too tired to move. Outside, Red Hollow had gone quiet, settling into its winter night. What happens Monday? Clara asked finally. You teach. I'll make sure Wade understands consequences if he comes near the school, and we'll see what the board decides. They might fire me anyway. Maybe, but you've got support now. Real support. You saw it tonight, people standing up, choosing your side. Cole kissed the top of her head. You've changed things, Clara. Whether the board acknowledges it or not. Monday morning came too fast. Clara walked to the school expecting empty desks, expecting parents to have reconsidered after Wade's threats. Instead, she found 32 students waiting. 5 new ones, sent by parents who'd heard about the program, and decided the teacher who'd protect children from armed outlaws was worth trusting. Clara stood at the front of the room, looking at their expectant faces. All right, she said, voice rough with emotion. Let's get to work. They worked. They read and wrote and calculated. They stumbled and succeeded and tried again. During lunch, Noah pulled Clara aside. Miss Whitmore, I've been practicing the reading method you showed me, the one with the spaced letters. He handed her a paper covered in his careful handwriting. I wrote this. By myself. Clara read it. A short story about a boy who couldn't read learning to love books. It was simple but clear, the words spelled correctly, the sentences coherent. Noah, this is wonderful. You think I could write more? Maybe keep a journal? I think you should write everything you want to write. She smiled. You've got talent. The afternoon brought Mayor Hutchins and Reverend Morrison. Clara's stomach dropped when she saw them, but she dismissed the students and faced them. The board met this morning, Hutchins said without preamble, after last night's incident. And Mrs. Blackwell moved to terminate your employment. She said you've created division in the community, endangered students, violated standards of appropriate conduct. Clara's hands clenched. And what did the board decide? Hutchins smiled. We voted her down, 3-2. You're retained permanently. The relief was so sudden and complete that Clara had to sit down. Permanently? As long as you keep doing what you're doing, teaching well, treating students fairly, showing up even when it's hard. Reverend Morrison spoke for the first time. What you did Friday night, protecting those children, that demonstrated character we can't ignore. You're the right teacher for this school. After they left, Clara sat alone in the quiet room, letting it sink in. She'd done it, survived the trial month and then some, kept her job despite powerful enemies, built something that would last beyond her. Cole found her there an hour later, staring at nothing. "Heard the news," he said. "They kept me." "Of course they did. You're brilliant at this." He sat beside her. "So what now?" Clara thought about the students who'd be back tomorrow, about the town slowly, painfully learning to change, about Cole's steady presence and the possibility of building a life here that was more than just surviving. "Now we keep going," she said. "We teach. We fight when we have to. We build something better." "We?" "Yeah." She took his hand. "We." The winter passed in a blur of teaching and snow and slow progress. Wade Cutter left town after Cole had a conversation with him that nobody talked about, but everyone understood. His brothers followed. The threat stopped. Clara's classes expanded. By February, she had 38 students. By March, 42. Parents who'd been skeptical started sending their children. The Chen sisters' English improved dramatically. Noah filled 3 journals with stories. Danny was reading books that challenged even Clara. In April, Catherine Wells' report was published in the Territorial Education Review. It praised Clara's methods, documented her success, and became required reading for teachers across Montana Territory. Letters arrived from other frontier towns asking for advice. The school board approved funding for a second teacher to help manage the growing enrollment. Clara hired a young woman from Helena who shared her philosophy that education belonged to everyone. Red Hollow itself began changing. Not overnight. Frontier towns didn't transform that easily. But slowly, incrementally, people started seeing their children differently. Started believing that poor kids and rich kids, immigrant kids and native-born kids all had potential worth developing. Mrs. Blackwell never warmed to Clara, but her influence waned as other families stopped listening. The social hierarchy she'd enforced for a decade crumbled under the weight of children who'd learned to see each other as equals. In late May, when wildflowers covered the Montana hills and the worst of winter had finally passed, Cole asked Clara to marry him. He did it at the school, after classes, in the place where they'd first started building something together. "I know it's fast," he said, kneeling with a simple ring. "And I know you've got your career and the school to think about. But I love you, Clara. I want to build a life with you. Here, in Red Hollow, with these kids and this community we're creating together." Clara looked at him. This rancher who'd believed in her when she was just a stubborn woman who'd fought an outlaw in the street, who'd supported her when everyone else doubted, who'd shown her that strength didn't mean fighting alone. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were married in June at the ranch, with the whole town invited. Students decorated everything with flowers. Danny read a poem he'd written. The Chen sisters sang. Even Mrs. Blackwell attended, though she didn't smile. The ranch became a second home for students who needed extra help or a safe place to go. Cole built a library in one of the outbuildings, filled it with books, and opened it to anyone who wanted to read. Clara taught evening classes for adults who'd never learned their letters. Red Hollow transformed from a dying frontier town into something else. A community where education mattered, where children's potential was recognized regardless of their background, where people chose cooperation over division more often than not. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. There were still fights over funding, still families who pulled their children out of school, still people who thought the old ways were better. But it was better than it had been, and better was enough. Years later, when Clara looked back on that first brutal month, she realized something crucial. She'd come to Red Hollow thinking she just needed to survive, to find a job, make it work, prove she could teach. But survival had never been the point. The point was the children who'd walked through her door afraid they didn't matter, who left knowing they did. It was Danny McCormick, who eventually went to university in Helena and became a teacher himself, returning to Red Hollow to run the expanded school system. It was Lily Chen, who became a doctor like she'd dreamed, and Noah Briggs, who published books that won prizes across the territory. It was Tom McCormick learning to read at 40 so he could understand what his son was learning. It was the Chen father crying with pride at his daughter's graduation. It was families from different backgrounds sitting together at community meals, their children playing together without thinking about who came from where. The point was proving that people could change if someone gave them a reason to. Clara stood on the school steps one autumn morning, 10 years after she'd first arrived in Red Hollow, watching students pour into a building that had been expanded twice. Cole stood beside her, their 3-year-old daughter balanced on his hip. Thinking about that first day? He asked. Thinking about how scared I was, how certain I'd fail. But you didn't. No, because I stopped trying to survive and started trying to matter. She took his free hand. Because people like you believed it was possible. Their daughter squirmed down and ran toward the school, where Danny, now Principal McCormick, caught her with a laugh. Clara had learned something crucial on that dusty Montana street when she'd fought Wade Cutter. Courage wasn't about being unafraid. It was about being terrified and fighting anyway because something mattered more than safety. Education mattered. Children mattered. Building communities where everyone had a chance mattered. And sometimes, just sometimes, one stubborn woman with nothing to lose could change everything. She'd come west expecting to teach reading and writing. Instead, she'd taught a town how to see its children as human beings deserving of opportunity. She taught them that different didn't mean less than, that poverty didn't equal stupidity, that change, while painful, was possible. And in the process, she'd learned something herself, that home wasn't a place you came from. It was what you built with people who chose to stand beside you when everything said to run. Red Hollow was home now. Messy, imperfect, still figuring itself out. But home. Cole squeezed her hand. You ready for today? Clara watched students file into the school, children of every background, every economic class, all heading inside to learn together. The school board had just approved funding for a third teacher. Catherine Wells was visiting next month to document the long-term results of Clara's methods. The territorial legislature was considering making Red Hollow's integrated approach mandatory across Montana. I'm ready, Clara said, and she was. For whatever came next. For the fight still ahead. For the students who needed someone to believe they mattered. For the life she'd built with Cole and the community they'd transformed together. She'd arrived in Red Hollow broken and desperate, thinking education was about books and lessons and basic literacy. Now she knew better. Real education was about teaching children they had value, that their voices mattered, that they could stand up and fight for themselves and each other. Real education was about courage, not the kind you were born with, but the kind you learned by watching other people refuse to give up. Clara Whitmore had come to teach. She'd ended up doing so much more. And every morning, when she stood in front of a classroom full of students who believed they could be anything because she'd believed it first, she knew exactly why she'd chosen to stay in this harsh, beautiful, impossible place. Because sometimes the only way to survive was to stop trying to survive and start trying to live. And life, messy and hard and uncertain as it was, turned out to be worth fighting for.